evening and welcome to tonight's Undaunted, bringing to the news on top stories. I am Awing. Let's begin. Debate over faith and political messaging. Mass abduction of 25 in Awing sparks fear days after a papal visit to the Cameroons. Parents decry rising fees and poor learning conditions in Catholic and mission schools across Ambazonia, deepening within frustration within communities already strained by insecurity and political tension. Against this backdrop of unrest and public anxiety, recent global headlines have also turned to Donald Trump following his televised Bible reading from the Oval Office, an act that has ignited debate over the role of religion in political leadership. While geographical distance, the juxtaposition shows a broader conversation about faith, authority, and how religious symbolism is used during moments of crisis in Cameroon's Ambazonia. However, the concerns are far more immediate. Families are grappling with safety fears after the reported abduction in Awing, while also questioning the affordability and standards of education in Catholic institutions, long seen as pillars of community life. The convergence of insecurity and dissatisfaction with social services is intensifying calls for accountability from both religious and political leaders. As events unfold, the tension between faith as a source of hope and its place within systems of power continues to shape public discourse locally in Ambazonia, in the Cameroons, globally and beyond. Well, all these and more we'll speak on tonight's Undaunted, but first, let's get the prime headlines. Well, tonight on Undaunted, we'll take you through the reports. We'll start with mass abduction of 25 in Awing as it sparks fear days after Papal's visit to the Cameroons. Also tonight, parents decry rising fees, poor learning conditions in Catholic and mission schools in Ambazonia. Archbishop AKERE visited interest threatened peace push after Pope's visit to the Cameroons. Also tonight, AKERE is in the news. He says Pope Leo XIV's message offers blueprints for convergence for governance in the Cameroons. On the African scene, Macky Sall calls for global peace and diplomacy in bid for UN Secretary General. And on the global scene, Donald Trump's Bible reading sparks debate over faith and political messaging. Now let's get the news in full briefings. At least 25 people have been abducted in Awing, near Santa in southern Cameroon's restive Ambazonia, in a late-night raid that has heightened fear and uncertainty among residents. Local sources say the victims were rounded up by armed men who arrived on motorcycles, forcing them at gunpoint to an undisclosed location under the cover of darkness. The attackers also reportedly seized around 10 motorcycles belonging to some of those taken. The incidents occurred in the area of Awing, close to Santa in southern Cameroons, most affected by the ongoing war in Ambazonia. No group has officially claimed responsibility, though such abductions have become a recurring feature of the war between Ambazonian state army and the colonial government forces. Residents say the community has been left in shock, with families desperately seeking information about the whereabouts of those of their loved ones. The latest attacks underscores the fragile security situation in the Cameroons, Ambazonia, where kidnappings, armed clashes, and displacement continues to disrupt daily life. The abduction comes just days after the visit of Pope Leo, a moment that had briefly drawn international attention to the Cameroons and to Bamenda, and raised hopes among some of the people who have lost hope and focused on peace and reconciliation efforts. As authorities have yet to issue a detailed response, concerns are mounting over the safety of civilians and the apparent ease with which armed groups continue to operate in Ambazonia. All right, we have our in-house analyst, Barrister Mbeseha, who will be in here to analyze some of the situations that we'll be bringing to the front burner. Good evening, Barrister.
Good evening, and thank you for having me.
All right, and it seems like the black that we both are wearing tonight would indicate a sad, a sad nation to the plight on the ground. 25 people being abducted just days after the visit of the Pope. And this is not the first incident anyway, but it just seems like the number of incidences and the number of victims keeps increasing. This is sad, but here is a report. 25 people, 25 families probably in pain, mourning, and what have you. Let's get your thoughts.
Well, I think we've analyzed situations like that here many times, most particularly in Mbeseha. And Awing is in Santa is in Mbeseha. And so I've had the opportunity before to say that where abductions take over the streets of any city, in any country, they speak well that there is no governance in place. Because as far as Santa and Mbeseha is concerned, that is one of the highly militarized areas of Ambazonia. And so if the thousands of the gendarmes and whoever you have there are unable to bring this under control, they are unable to give you an explanation, because up to this point, no official statement has been issued. It just shows the degree, the level of the disorder that has taken over the streets. And above all, in the first place, in the second place, this is taking place in Mbeseha. This is where the Catholic St. Joseph Metropolitan Cathedral is found, where the Pope was preaching less than a week ago. He was there on Thursday like this, a week today, and talking peace. And if people can still be adopted in numbers, it speaks for the urgency of peace, the urgency of steps to be taken to stop all that. But who is being called to take the urgent steps? It's not you and me, because we're helpless. There's nothing we can do. The responsibility lies with the government. It is the government that is responsible for bringing peace there. If there's disorder, it is the government's responsibility to find out why there is disorder and bring peace. And that was the Pope's message at the Metropolitan Cathedral in Bamenda exactly a week today. And so that is where we find ourselves. If all this is still going on in Mbeseha, then where is the Pope's message? Where is Archbishop Andrew's message, which said peace now? Now has turned into a week. We didn't expect peace to come within a week, but we expect steps to be taken to arrive at peace as soon as the Pope left or while he was still here. But it looks like it has not been taken. This is an urgent reminder to them that the situation is not returning to normal. Some miles away, people are still being at risk. They didn't adopt 2, not 3, not 4, 25. Some villages don't even number up to 25 people. So it's an adoption of a whole village. And so where are they taken to? We don't know. Again, this is a reminder to all of us. There is no security anywhere in Ambazonia, most particularly in Bamenda. Normalcy has not returned. The Pope made the call. The authorities concerned should take the steps to make sure these things don't repeat themselves. Over to you.
All right, thank you so much, Barrister. We talked about some of this, issues the last time we were here together, but it seems they are all, popping up in different angles. The next is education. We talked about how there are leaking roofs, or a poor situation the last time. But this time around, parents in Ambazonia have raised fresh concerns over increasing school fees and deteriorating learning condition in public and mission schools, particularly in areas affected by the ongoing Ambazonian war. And at St. Bide's campus, parents say the administration has introduced an additional examination fee of 2,500 CFA francs per child for students in Forms 1 and 2. The demand, they argue, comes despite earlier payments covering what were presented as full school fees for the academic year. Families describe the new charges as a heavy financial burden, especially in a nation already grappling with economic hardship and insecurity. Parents had already budgeted based on their official fees. These extra demands are becoming too frequent and difficult to sustain. This is what the parents are saying. Now, beyond the financial strain, parents are also highlighting what they describe as their learning conditions for students. In some cases, children are reportedly attending classes in severely damaged structures without proper roofing, just like you're seeing on the screen, leaving them exposed to harsh weather conditions during rains or extreme heat. Lessons are even often disrupted, further affecting the quality of education. The situation shows the broader challenges faced by schools in the war-affected areas of Ambazonia, where infrastructure has been destroyed or neglected and access to education remains inconsistent. Now, parents have accused some school authorities of exploiting the situation by introducing additional levies under various pretexts. They are now calling on the Catholic Church hierarchy to intervene, ensure transparency in fee structure, and prioritize the welfare of students. Education stakeholders warn that without urgent action, both the rising cost and the poor state of facility could further discourage school attendance and deepen the crisis in a region where access to education is already under threat. All right, so Barrister, with all of the poor infrastructure and the lack of basic school amenities that we see them going through, we also have the issue of school fees, the hike in school fees, and it's just scary. How much can a parent even pay when a structure is dilapidated? How much can a parent pay to raise the standard? So really, I don't know if they are thinking that to have a better school environment for these kids, they would have to increase the school fees. But the truth is, the structures have to be laid for, for kids to, I know there used to be what they call developmental levy or something like that, but then these monies cannot be gotten from school fees. Well, I stand to be corrected, but increasing the school fees of kids in an environment struggling to have a structure, basic structure, school structure, do you think is going to help to ease some of this pressure? Why do you think the fees are even increased in the first place?
Well, I don't know the reason, but let us not mix so many things together. From the picture you showed me there, it's between St. Bede's College. St. Bede's College, Ashinkom, I know the place very, very well. It's a Catholic secondary school. It's one of the oldest in the country. So their problem, I guess, is not infrastructure. That doesn't mix up what is happening in St. Bede's and what we saw in AKERE with attached buildings. Almost all the Catholic mission institutions, be they primary schools, they have no problem of structure. They have the buildings there, very solid buildings. The best, if you saw the building that you showed out there, they are some of the best buildings you can find there. But in general, the second point is, in general, mission schools are expensive because they are unlike other schools. 2 days ago, we were analyzing a school a Catholic school, Where the children left the dormitory, they were led away by the bees, and the principal was making a report. Why? Because their dormitory is secure. They know when the children are not there. They supervise them. And so that is the character of mission schools. And Catholic schools in particular, let me deal with the Catholic schools. It cannot be exploitation. That is the wrong connotation. If they are asking for more money, there must be a reason for that. Because a Catholic school is not run on a profit basis. Now, almost all the money, look at the buildings, they cannot talk about infrastructure in that type of school. So the school are run for the interest of the area. And it is the same school that we're talking about. This school is in Boyo. I will know the security involved there. For people even to brave and send their children there at this time of war is something very, very serious. Just like the other day we were analyzing the other one. If the principal could not brave it there to stay there and make the report, the bees will just invade that place and take away all the children. And so asking them to pay more money is not new. But the problem is simply that the parents in the schools there's something they call the PTA, Parent Teacher Association, that liaises with the administration. If they're asking for an extra fee, for examination fee, they would have to explain why. They are not just trying to exploit people. Private schools in general are expensive. The other we're analyzing government schools where people pay taxes. They are opened by the government and declared to be free. And then they are not free. The buildings are not there. The teachers are not there. But compared to mission schools, be they Catholic schools, call it missionary schools in short, because there are different categories of private schools. There are mission schools, Baptists, Presbyterian, Catholics, and so on and so forth. Then there are the lay private, opened by individuals who might be making for themselves, proprietors or proprietor. You make profit out of it. And so once you come to schooling, the options are all there. Say you attach to a government school, you have the GSS, the GHS, and all the schools, they are there. Most of them are empty. After that, you have schools. You pay money. You have all that option. Or you go to a missionary school, be it Catholic, like in this case, St. Bede's, be it Presbyterian, be it Baptist, where you pay. So it is for the parent to make a choice, depending upon what you will get out of it. We said the other day it is true. Those children in St. Bede's, just like the ones in Sacred Heart, just like the one in Okoyo, they are fed, they are lodged. A lot of money goes in at this time of crisis. And so the parents have the right to choose. We cannot castigate them. And then let them make their concerns known to the school administration. You can very easily come to an agreement on what is necessary, what is not necessary. And so I don't think it is exploitation. No, that is the wrong thing. I don't think in terms of the Catholic schools, it is lack of infrastructure. No, that's the wrong thing. I know many schools, they don't open a college, for example, and then start to build. They build and open. Solid buildings put there. So, but if there's that issue of money, it can be addressed, and it should be addressed to the appropriate quarters. The church is so well organized. At the head of that school income is the principal. At the head of the principal is the bishop. The guy who is in charge of schools in the bishop's house is the Catholic Education Secretary. This one can be handled very, very carefully. And so let the parents make their choices. They have the right to complain. If they don't like it, they don't like the quality of what they are getting, they don't like what they are getting for their children, they are very much at liberty to move to other schools, if that is possible. But that is not the essence. The essence is that it's difficult to run those schools. Let the parents, because the children need the education in this time of difficulties, let the issues be addressed. I'm sure they will come out with an appropriate answer. Over to you.
All right, that's very nice. Let's move into more issues now. This report says that Archbishop Andrew NKEA of Bamenda has warned that vested interest on both sides of the Cameroons could undermine efforts to act on recommendations stemming from Pope Leo's visit last week. Speaking on the prospect for peace following the Pontiff's April 15th to 18th trip, Archbishop NKEA said actors within the French Cameroon government circles and amongst the Ambazonia group have benefited from the prolonged war and may resist its resolution. Now, according to him, he says there are people, individuals on both sides who do not want to see the Ambazonian war end because they benefit significantly from what Andrew NKEA said. So, Barrister, the first question is, who are those, do you think, he's talking on that, are benefiting from this crisis? You talk about that, then we'll continue with the rest of the report, because we want to, state out some points and some facts here. Who are those that you think that Andrew NKEA could be talking about here? If you think is important, we'll talk about it. If you think is not, we'll move on with the report.
No, it is important. It is important. But I think the difficulty is that Andrew, the Archbishop, is addressing the issues in the wrong way. Are there people making benefit out of this war? Sure. Essentially, in my own opinion, the greatest beneficiaries of the war, in the war, are not Ambazonian fighters or their sponsors. They are the government. Because they use the war to pretend to buy arms and buy them at half the price. They use the war to pretend to deploy people everywhere and pay outstation allowances. And so the longer the war, in fact, they themselves are armed contractors on the side of government. Come to the Ambazonian side. Are there people in Ambazonia trying to get profit out of this? Of course they are there. But are these the real Ambazonian fighters? No. They are people who have infiltrated the struggle to make profit out of it in the name of the struggle. For example, we have heard about abductions in Bamenda and other places for ransom. How many of those people abducting people and taking ransom are actually Ambazonian fighters or their leaders? To me, zero. Anybody who have a code and will understand that any rare Ambazonian fighter or supporter who does that is committing a crime. They should not even do that. But again, people have infiltrated this thing with the complicity of the government. We remember the story of Regina Mundi when she was abducted and taken to somewhere in Momo. Her story from her own mouth. She saw weapons there. And she was surprised, where is it coming from? She realized that the weapons were coming from government. The ADF got the weapons from government. Some of them sold to them privately. And so what is making this money? Was the ADF actually fighting for Ambazonia? No. And so that generalized statement is correct. But if the Archbishop could calm down, he would be able to identify the rare people who can be obstructionists. The problem is coming from those people who are making profit out of it, but mostly not from the side of Amazonia. It's from the side of the government. Because, for example, let us just leave away other things. This war has brought what they call disarmament and reconstruction and whatever they call it. For purpose of reconstruction, the government took loans from all over the world. They have reconstructed nothing, the money is gone. Those contractors have benefited because of the war. Because of this war, they set up a DDR, took loans, and pretend to be feeding these boys in the camp, in the DDR. They fed nobody, the children are hungry, they are running away. Where is the money? They've stolen the money. Are these Amba people? No. This is government. So I think the Archbishop should be more pointed. The truth is, they should yesterday, 2 days ago, I said the problem with the Archbishop and the church and everybody is that there's an elephant in the house. It's so difficult to be frightened to call the elephant by some. If you come out and say, look, there are mostly government people benefiting from this thing. Giving this example that I've just given, maybe they will eliminate him. So you will not call the elephant by the name. And I'm not talking out of imagination. I have projects in my own area, the BLM. They were conceived under the reconstruction of Mr. Pobia during this war. That was 2020, 2021. Up to today, nothing has been done there. The contracts have been signed. The money is gone. Can we blame Ambazonians for that? No. Over to you.
For that. Well, the report goes on to say that the Archbishop cautioned that the reality is creating serious challenges to implementing any proposal linked to the Pope's visit. Remember, he said he wanted to have a committee. So he says that it is therefore clear that implementing all the recommendations from the Pope's visits will face serious challenges, particularly from those whose interests are tied to the continuation of the war, he added. Well, Andrew NKEA remarks reflects growing concern among clergy and civil society that a war economy has taken hold since the Ambazonia war erupted in 2017. Analyst points to multiple revenue streams that have emerged around the war, including security budgets, checkpoints levies, kidnappings for ransom, and diaspora fundraising. Both state and non-state actors have been accused of profiting from insecurity. Well, formal dialogue efforts have stalled since the 2019 major national dialogue. While the government created special status for the southern Cameroons and established reconstruction programs, fighting has continued. There is war, segmented, and several leaders have rejected talks without preconditions on the form of the state. Now, this is what Andrew NKEA is saying. Well, Pope Leo XIV visited Bamenda and Douala between April 15th and 18th, emphasizing themes on service, inclusion, transparency, dialogue, integrity, and hope. His presence drew large crowds and renewed appeals from church leaders for a negotiated settlement. The Catholic Church has played a mediating role throughout the crisis. Well, that is what they say, but Mbeseha can debunk that at the end of the day. Several bishops in southern Cameroons have tried to facilitate local ceasefire talks and humanitarian corridors. According to Bishop NKEA himself, he said he has repeatedly called for an end to attacks on schools, clergy, and civilians. Well, also this report also says that former presidential candidate AKERE last week described the Pope's message as a normative compass and blueprint for governance, arguing that Cameroon suffers from a crisis of trust between institutions and citizens. Well, NKEA's warning at a pragmatic layer, maybe or maybe not, moral appeals alone may falter without addressing those who gain from the status quo, and that's why we tried to establish that. His remarks shows growing concerns that despite renewed calls for dialogue and reconciliation, entrenched political and economic interests may continue to stall meaningful progress ever happen. The French Cameroon government has not publicly responded to NKEA's comments. Officials have previously said they are open to dialogue with groups that renounce violence and respect state institutions. Right, but at the foundation, it is highly important that I also mention here that the Ambazonian war has killed more than 60,000 people and displaced over 700 people. This is according to UN estimates anyway. Schools remain shattered in parts of the southern Cameroons, and attacks on civilians continues to be reported weekly. So whoever is benefiting should have this at the back of the mind. Well, Barrister, what would you say?
The story is a little bit too complex, but the basic things are there. The basic is that whoever wants to mediate will face obstacles. Not from Ambazonia, no. Essentially from the government side. Essentially from the government side. So it is not Ambazonia who are obstacles. Let me just give an example. The government in Yaoundé believes in something they call the elites, the highly placed Anglophones in the administration. Amongst them is a guy called Atangaji. Atangaji has never hidden his views. He believes that there's nothing like Ambazonia Anglophone problem. But when the Pope comes to Bamenda, and he's talking about looking for a solution, Atangaji is sitting on the front bench. He's really sitting on the front bench in the church, looking at the Pope. These are the people that you want to overcome. And there are many of them at the level of government. And so The, the problem, I said many times before, the bishops want to do something and don't care with these committees. But there's one thing they must understand, which I just think that they don't understand. The Yaoundé regime, in its own format, is a very difficult regime to deal with. It's a regime that does not forgive anybody. Once you go there against them, they will not forgive you. If the Catholic Church will just look back at its own history right there, the number of clergy who have died, not in this struggle, but they've died during the reign of Pobia, retired Archbishop Plomi, Mbala, Reverend Sisters, who did not die in the Ambazonian War, who were killed by this regime, that they have never repented for them. And the Pope comes there, is the highest authority of the church. They invite him to the the first people to take communion there include Paul Biya, whom I've said here many times. That is the principal orchestrator of this war. He is the first man to take communion from the Pope. They invite the Pope to come and baptize their children. And then the Pope is talking, look like throwing water on the deck's back. And so until you need somebody, some clerics, to understand that they are dealing with the wrong. Their problem is not Ambazonians. Their problem is the government, who is not willing to bend an inch. Why is this war even going on? Why did the war start? It started because somebody suggested that there should be a discussion on the form of state. And the government position has been the form of state is non-negotiable. The state shall remain one and indivisible, no more, no less. And we know that the idea of one and indivisible is to absorb southern Cameroon. The whole world, including the Pope and others, have said, go to the negotiation table without precondition and discuss the outcome, the difficulties that brought the war. We are prepared to go there. But hear what they are saying. We will not go there until those who take up arms. They didn't take up arms for no reason. And so the problem is not Amazonian, the problem is the government. And whoever wants to do it, and I've said it many times before, they must admit that there are only two parties to the struggle. There are only two warring factions. Any other person coming in there, federalists, they are not fighting anything. There's an Ambazonian army, tattered as it is, fighting the government army as armed as it is. If there are thousands of people who are not going to school, it is because of this fighting. If there are thousands of people who have died, it is because of this fighting, not because of talking. And so, if they cannot confront this thing, these fighters in the bushes, caught in the bush in the bushes, are not just sitting in the bushes, when they have a political leadership. That until you confront that political leadership with the political leadership on the other side, that is the political leadership on the side of government, which is quite identifiable. The president is there, his ministers are there. Those are the politicians managing the war. Ambazonians have some structures. Until you can identify this and follow it up, you're wasting your time. But you must understand, as I've said many times, that it is difficult to deal with Yaoundé. Because Yaoundé will make a promise today and fail it tomorrow. They will do something to you today, promise something today, and deliver something else the next day. And so, the Pope came and delivered a message. The most important thing to deliver from the message is what he said. And to who was his audience? The Pope talked about peace. He talked of reconciliation. He talked of justice. These are three key components. Call it dialogue or whatever thing. Everybody understands that. That's what we've been saying. But who was his audience? Who is the audience of the Pope? The audience of the Pope to the palace was the president and his ministers. They were all sitting there physically. They were the foreign diplomats, which includes the French ambassador, who sat there. They are the ones sponsoring the war financially or otherwise. And so the message was delivered to the people. They went to Bamenda, not to meet Ambazonian fighters, because Ambazonian fighters are not even in the streets. They went to Bamenda to meet the victims and to hear their story. The story in the cathedral was the story of the victims. I'm not sure that I could have seen anybody come there with his gun or spear and say, well, I'm an Ambazonian fighter, this is me here. So, but the Pope heard the suffering. It was just a repetition of what the Pope already knows. And so the Archbishop and his people must know these facts. I've insisted many times that it is practically difficult, I will not say impossible, to deal with the regime in Yaoundé until you can stand your grounds. They will deceive you. They have always deceived people. They have been lying perpetually forever. And so the aim of the whole thing, the Pope coming there, I've said and I repeat again, is not just to bring peace without any other thing. No, peace cannot come without reconciliation. Peace cannot come without justice. And you start with justice first. After they obtain justice, you reconcile the parties, and then peace follows. This is a heavy burden to crack. It's not going to come when Andrew and his people go and buy a few Amba boys in the bushes and give them beer or give them a few thousand francs. That is not going to end. They've tried that before with their own words. The government gave them money, made them peace ambassadors. They went and bargained with the so-called Amba fighters in the bushes. They went abroad and paid money to some people. The thing did not end. Have they learned anything from it? If nobody has learned anything from it, Andrew should learn, because he was the chairman of that committee that they created with the moderator of the provincial church. If they have learned nothing from it, then they are difficult people to learn anything at all. Over to you.
All right, thank you so much, Barrister. Thank you so much. Well, moving on now, let's get what AKERE is saying clearly. We mentioned part of what he said in in the speech for Archbishop Andrew NKEA, but let's get AKERE stand as well. Now, renowned barrister and former presidential candidate AKERE says Pope Leo's recent address to the Cameroons should be adopted as normative compass for national governance, arguing that the pontiff diagnosed their country's core crisis more clearly than many political programs, according to him. In his words, he says the real significance of Pope Leo XIV's visit lies in the fact that he offered Cameroon not a technical program but a normative compass. While during his April 15 to 18 visit to Bamenda and Douala, where Pope Leo emphasized 6 themes Mona described as the ingredients of national renewal: service, inclusion, transparency, dialogue, integrity, and hope. The Pope delivered his remarks with diplomatic restraint but moral clarity, Muna noted. For Muna, the Pope's speech resonates because the Cameroon's challenges extends beyond isolated policy failure. He pointed to a broader crisis of trust between institutions and citizens, between the promise of the Republic and the experience of many communities. That framing links directly to the Cameroon's layered crisis, the Ambazonian War, in what he has tagged as the Northwest and the Southwest since 2017. He says the Boko Haram incursions in the far north and persistent concerns over governance, corruption, and civil space nationwide. Well, he goes on to say that the Pope's speech should therefore be read as a call for a new civic compact. He says, if taken seriously, it is a blueprint for governance beyond inertia, beyond slogans, and beyond fear. Pope Leo's choice of cities, according to him, was significant. He says Bamenda City, the capital of the Midland Zone of the Federal Republic of Ambazonia, has been an epicenter of the Ambazonian War, where schools, clergy, and civilians have been caught in violence between the Ambazonian army and the colonial security forces. The economic hub reflects pressures, that's Douala now, reflects economic pressures of inequality, urban governance, and youth unemployment. By centering his visit on the peace and dialogue, the Pope addressed both the security and moral dimension of the Cameroons, the Cameroon's instability, without endorsing political factions, a balance Muna praised as normative rather than prescriptive. Muna, who is a former presidential contender and prominent anti-corruption advocate, argued that translating the Pope's 6 principles into practice would require measurable shifts, inclusive dialogue mechanisms for conflict areas, transparent management of public resources, and integrity in electoral and judicial processes. The ingredients he names are not abstract, Muna said. They are the daily deficits many Cameroonians experience. The presidency has not issued a formal response to, of course, Muna's interpretation of what the Pope's message is. Government spokespeople have previously welcomed the pontiff calls for peace while rejecting external lessons on governance. All right, Barrister, AKERE Muna has given a long speech and says, look, it's far from politics. If adopted, could serve. Do you think, do you agree with Muna? Do you disagree? What areas do you disagree, and what areas do you agree on?
No, I largely agree with Muna, because in that document, Muna is talking about the overall, what the territory they call Cameroon. That includes Ambazonia in his own imagination. But before this Muna's thing of today, last week or 2 weeks ago, Muna put out something again when the idea of a vice president came up. He put out something, look, give this vice president once, or the deal is dead. According to him, that was the end of the journey if they didn't do it. So from Muna's writings, you know that Muna is not a man who will be taught something. Muna he lived in Yaoundé for almost all his life. And he knows what is going on. He has run for president of Cameroon. He understands he is the son of St. Muna, the people who took us to where we are finding ourselves today. And so Muna has done his own best. He's not realizing that as a human being, he had reached the ceiling of what he could do. To change Cameroon, as I just said in my last segment, it's difficult to change Cameroon, if not impossible. Muna, as an individual, in his personal capacity as a lawyer, as a man with international cover, has tried to do everything that he could do with his professional ability, his individual personal abilities, and he has failed. And so the Pope comes in with this morality. He thinks something can be done just because the Pope has come. Again, let the Andros learn from Muna that there's a ceiling to which you can go. But with the Pope coming, you can only bend that ceiling because the regime in Yaoundé is a junta of criminals put out there. There are political armed robbers. Muna was a supporter of Chiroma and all those people in the elections. They saw with their own naked eyes how they cheated Chiroma with impunity. But to make things look interesting, they cheated Chiroma, the Andros, the bishops, and everybody saw it with their own physical eyes. But they will not say it because they know that to speak against the regime in Yaoundé is to look for death. And so Muna has done all that. Muna has been doing some of the things which are controversial as far as we are concerned as Ambazonians. Because when you see Muna like that, it looks like he's looking off in a dream. He has always known where Ambazonia stands, the problem of Southern Cameroon. I remember at the beginning of this crisis, I think 2017 or so, Muna himself wrote a letter to the ICC, International Criminal Court, suggesting that they should investigate and punish the perpetrators of genocide. So he knew a genocide was going on. The victims of the genocide were what they call Anglophones. He called for that, he went nowhere. And so what Muna is saying now is a repetition of what he has said before. He talked about corruption. He has tried to fight corruption, something he called Glencore, the most recent one, where the money, where they've taken thousands of CFA francs, millions rather, in terms of US dollar, millions, to bargain the price of gas and oil that is exported from Cameroon and sell it for nothing, but steal all the money. He has gone to London, he has gone to the United States, he has gone to everywhere to prosecute that case. The case has gone nowhere because you cannot prosecute anybody in Cameroon without the authority of the president. What we disagree with him is that as a human rights activist, as a human being, he has been struggling in terms of Glencore because according to him, they are cheating Cameroon of its oil. That's what he's saying. He refused to see that Cameroon, that money stolen is not in Cameroon, it's the money from Indian. Indian people have nothing, Indian. The Southwest has nothing in Southwest. The millions of dollars they even give to give a bribe could have given Indian people ordinary water to drink. It is not there. And Muna has never said so. Muna is a very powerful lawyer. He knows, and he wrote it himself down there. He knows that there's the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, which charter states in Article 21 that people shall be entitled to their natural resources. These natural resources which are being stolen from India, which is arguing about in terms of green coal, India has nothing about it. But that's a charter that Cameroon is signatory to it. And so Muna can do all that. I think now he realizes, and we think that the bishops and the archbishop will realize the same thing, that the regime in Yaoundé is difficult to bend. Unless you use iron to bend an iron, it will not bend. Stop going to speak to the regime in Yaoundé in a soft-spoken manner like the Andros do. They will not move you. They will not move Yaoundé. They will not move Yaoundé even an inch. So let them focus. If Ambazonian soldiers or politicians committed a crime, the crime is minor compared to what is happening in Yaoundé, compared to what they are doing to our people. We were just talking in the last segment. Kidnapping 25 people in Pinyin. This is Anglophone, they call it. This is Bamenda. These are Ambazonians. Why are they kidnapping them? With impunity. Where's the money? Where's the government deploying bills there, and then they are not able to stop these sort of things? And so again and again and again, Mona has a very good side, but his approach politically is just mean, as far as Ambazonia is concerned. He's thinking that he can get justice in Cameroon. We're not concerned with that. We want justice for Ambazonia first. First deal with your own house, then you can deal with the public. He's thinking that he can get dialogue for Cameroon first, when the Muslims will come and talk with Chiroma, when the camp people and the Bulus will talk with the Bamilikis. That's not where we are. We are looking for justice for Ambazonia. We are looking for dialogue with Ambazonia. We are looking for reconciliation with Ambazonia. Because Ambazonia are a people who voluntarily want to join this people. If Muna does not see this and say, look, enough is enough, then something is wrong. Over to you.
Obviously, something is wrong. All right, thank you so much, Barrister. This is where we'll draw the curtain on tonight on Undaunted. Thank you so much. Hopefully, over the weekend, we would have you on Tap at the Kings on Ambazonia this week. All right, and hopefully some of those issues will be brought to the front burner for more conversations. Until then, do well to have a wonderful day. When we return from the break, we'll head into Africa, where Macky Sall calls for global peace and diplomacy in a bid for UN Secretary General role. Former Senegalese President Macky Sall has urged world leaders to prioritize diplomacy and peaceful conflict resolution as he seeks to become the next Secretary General of the United Nations. Speaking after an informal dialogue with UN member states, Sall stressed the urgency of de-escalating rising global tension, particularly those involved the United States, Israel, and Iran. He called for sustained mediation efforts, including those led by Pakistan, and appealed for restraint from all sides. He says, we don't need more bombs. We don't need missiles. We need peace, Sall said, underscoring his commitment to dialogue over military action. Sall is one of the 4 candidates currently auditioning for the UN's top job, a process that comes at a time of heightened geopolitical divisions. While his candidacy has been endorsed by Burundi, he has yet to receive official backing from his home country, Senegal, or the African Union. Other contenders include former Chilean President, other former Chilean President Michelle Bachelet, Nuclear Chief Rafael Mariano Grossi, and UN Trade Chief Rebecca Grospan, all of whom have addressed representatives of the organization's 193 member states. In his remarks, Sal highlighted the need for a comprehensive approach linking peace, security, development, and human rights, with particular attention to vulnerable groups such as women and children. His appeal comes as the Security Nations Security Council faces criticisms for its inability to act decisively on major conflicts, including those in Ukraine and Gaza, reflecting the divisions amongst global powers. The next Secretary General will be appointed by the UN General Assembly following a recommendation from the Security Council. Although no timeline has been set for the final decision, Sal's message positions him as a candidate focused on restoring consensus and strengthening the UN's role in maintaining global peace and stability. Oh well, we'll still see how that comes up. But in the globe, when we return, we'll head into Trump's Bible reading as it sparks debate over faith and political messaging. When Donald Trump publicly reads from the Bible, it inevitably carries more meaning than just the words on the religious page. Religion and politics have always intersected, especially in the United States, so the act itself isn't unusual. The passage he chose about humility, repentance, and healing a nation is actually quite weighty, and on its own expresses a serious moral message that many people, religion or not, can understand. What makes this moment complicated is the context around it. Trump's past interaction with religious leaders have often seemed selective or timed in ways that align with political advantage, which leads some people to question whether this was a genuine expression of faith or a calculated signal to a specific audience. That skepticism doesn't come from nowhere. It's shaped by earlier high-profile moments that felt more symbolic than sincere. At the same time, it would be too simplistic to dismiss the reading outright as fake or meaningless. Public figures can act with mixed motives. Something can be personally meaningful to them while also serving a political purpose. That dual nature is common in leadership, especially when addressing topics as powerful and identity-shaping as religion. Well, in the end, the reading says as much about the audience as it does about Trump himself. Those inclined to trust him may see a call for moral reflection, while critics see a familiar pattern of using religion as a tool. The truth likely sits somewhere in between, shaped by both intention and perception, which is why the reaction has been so divided. Oh well, we'll continue to see happenings coming in from this particular Bible reading of Trump. But that is where we'll draw the curtain on tonight's Undaunted. But before we go, let's take a look at the reports that made it to tonight's headlines. Well, tonight on Undaunted, we told you that mass abduction of 25 in Awing sparks fear days after Papal's visit to the Cameroons. Also tonight, we told you that parents decry rising fees, poor learning conditions in Catholic schools in Ambazonia. Tonight, we also told you that Archbishop AKERE vested interest threatened peace push after Pope's visit to the Cameroons, while AKERE says that Pope Leo's message offers blueprints for governance in the Cameroons. On the African scene, we told you that Macky Sall has called for global peace and diplomacy in his bid for UN General Secretary role, while Trump's Bible reading has sparked debate over faith and political messages. Well, that's it for tonight's Undaunted, bringing to the news on Untold Stories. On behalf of Barrister Mbeseha, our in-house analyst, and a team of technicians behind tonight's production, is good night and God bless.